Good evening, everyone. This is Back Garden Reads, and today, or rather tonight, we are talking about or reviewing the book Robot City, the third book in the series anyway, called Cyborg, and it's written by William F. Wu, a Nebula Award nominee, back when awards kind of meant something. Just like the previous books in the series, it's mostly you follow these characters, Derek and Kate, into Robot City, and they have generally some adventures or mysteries throughout the whole series of books, at least so far, figuring out what the city is, how to leave the city, who each other's identities are, and so on and so forth. Now, early on in this book, and this is a spoiler for the first two books, is that Kate is not Kate. Her actual name is Ariel. And it's not Kate Burgess, it's Ariel Welch. And she is a daughter of a very famous or very rich planetary I'm not sure if she's a planetary governor or not. It doesn't go into that much details about her family, though that's not exactly important or important to the time of the book. And for the quick plot synopsis, well, actually, first, the laws of robotics, if I can find them. Man, I would like, well, I can't seem to find them, but if you've read the other books or anything Isaac Asimov, or you've seen my other reviews, you probably know what the whole thing is already. Like, a human cannot come to harm through inaction or direct action. To the second law is they have to obey the orders of a human unless it conflicts with the first law. The third law is that a robot must preserve its own life unless, and I mean unless, it conflicts with orders 2 and 3. More specifically, 3. So if a human orders it to harm itself, it will harm itself. Now, for the general plot synopsis and how those laws apply, because like every Isaac Asimov type robot story, even the ones not written by Isaac Asimov, all mysteries that follow those three same laws. And you can quickly find out what the whole point of the story is, what the problem is, and how they determine to tackle that problem. And for this, as the book subtitle, the actual book subtitle is Cyborg, you can probably tell what the main thing is. And that the main problem is that they're trying to get off the planet, and they want to find a spaceship, and they try different ways to get off the planet, and until eventually someone comes down, a human comes down, and they had undergone such traumatic injury that they transplant his brain from his body into a robot body instead. And where the conflict arises is that because he doesn't have the positronic brain, that's how the laws are programmed anyway, if he doesn't have the positronic brain, he's technically not a robot, and he's more powerful than a human. He's technically a human and a robot, so he's a cyborg, and he's kind of a mix of both. He's not subject to the laws of robotics, meaning he can do a lot more damage than a regular robot, but he's still ultimately human. And there is a conundrum that happens because of that, and the main story is solving that problem. One of the key things that you learn early on is that there is and this links to the key to the end of the first book that takes them to Robot City, and this key, and that it's one possible way off the planet and back home in back to wherever their homes are. And they quickly figure out, okay, that doesn't work. More questions do arise in the mystery of this overarching mystery in this book series, and unlike the mystery box, while it brings up new mysteries, it still closes out some older ones and on its way out. However, the main mystery is still who is Derek, because he exhibits all these sorts of traits and all that, especially that make him a very interesting character, and makes it, because like how would he know so in depth about the laws of robotics and and technology and all that, unless even with his amnesia, which doesn't play up too much. The amnesia, doesn't play up too much in the book, because it's not really the main focus of the mystery, and you could say that this is actually that it might be a little bit of a diversion in the main plot, but it's still kind of vital, because you do learn some key information about the surrounding characters. And then on top of that, near the last third of the book, they reintroduce some characters from the very first book. And they reintroduce those characters, and they do help later on in the climax and the resolution of the story. And just like before, with every book previous, there is a data bank with illustrations by Paul Revochet? Oh, I don't know. But here's the first one. This is the dome. This is the Robot City with a dome. And then here's another image of the city. It actually kind of reminds me of the ODST city, New Mombasa, if I remember correctly. That was the name. But it kind of reminds me, the architecture, it kind of reminds me of that at times. And then there's like this really cool future tech art that you can sometimes find online, or there's certain artists that do it. They're really quite interesting, and I wouldn't say retro-futuristic, but it's this really cool sort of minimal maximalist sort of way. It's not like overly designed, but it's such a grandiose vision using such simple shapes that it becomes kind of this cool sort of architectural mix. And then there's this vacuum tube, small cargo transport, that's actually important at one point in the book. That's pretty interesting. It's pretty cool to see the actual illustrations of it. The tunnel transport system, some robots there. And then there's Dianites. That's like a special material that they find in the book. It's got this whole paragraph of it, several paragraphs. And then here's the cyborg. I don't really like this design, to be honest. It looks kind of, I don't know. It looks like one of those. Oh, I've forgotten what they're called, but they're like those robots or androids that you find in Alien Isolation. It reminds me of those. And then it goes into William F. Wu. And yeah, like the way they describe the cyborg, I kind of like this illustration a whole lot more than I like the illustration in the back. And so, in my mind, I choose this one because this just generally looks cooler. Whereas the other one looks kind of like freakish and weird. Odd. It's like, ugh. Now, not all the characters are returning. A lot of the characters that are introduced in the second book do not appear in this book whatsoever. I would say that some of the new characters, well, one of the new characters is definitely not gonna, well, I can't say definitely because I haven't read through the books yet, but I'd say it's very unlikely that we'll see him again in future. Whereas there are two other characters near the very beginning of the book that will be important later on in the series, I suspect. And it's a very old book. Chances are it's out of print, unfortunately. The prose is kind of on the same level as last time. It does look a little cleaner, and there is the problem that it feels a little bit more like it explains a little bit more, like expository a bit more than the previous book. It feels more like the first book. However, the first book does have the problem of this just really inane explanation of like finger walking or whatever. And it's such a weird thing to talk about that I just don't like it. It's still a good story. I just think the exposition for the first book is kind of crap. But otherwise, I think this is a very good book, and if you are able to read it, I would recommend it pretty wholeheartedly. But again, it's unlikely because it's pretty old and it's not popular enough to have ever had a reprint. So, and plus it's multiple authors throughout the books. Like even the fourth book, Prodigy, will have a completely different author. But otherwise, I totally recommend this, and I hope you have a lovely day or evening or whatever.